Once the poster boy of the great Indian American dream, managing director of McKinsey, later to be jailed for alleged insider trading. A story of highs and lows, a story that deserves to be told, a story that's now a book where the mind is without fear. Rajat Gupta joins us now to tell us that fascinating life story. Thank you very much for joining us here on India Today, Mr. Gupta. You started writing this book in a jail cell. Was that to set the record straight, or a form of catharsis for you to almost feel that this is the only way I can come to terms with what's happened to me in my life?
Well, it was inspired by two things. One was a fellow prisoner of mine. And you get to know people, and we were walking around together, and I was telling him my story, and he said, "You must write a book." And coincidentally, a few weeks later, I got a note from Abhik and Chiki saying they wanted to come and see me in prison. They're family friends, and they wanted to come and see me in prison. So they came, and then Chiki said, "You must write a book." So I don't know the first thing about writing a book. So I said, okay, I'll start trying. And in the prison, I started collaborating with this fellow prisoner of mine, writing an outline. So he and I would talk, and I would write down an outline. That's how it started.
The storyline, of course, is that Rajat Gupta, managing director of McKinsey, a global business icon, got greedy, that Rajat Gupta engaged in insider trading. In the book, you've categorically denied all those charges. You say you did not willfully provide any information, you received no payments, got no money, and yet at the end of the day, Mr. Gupta, you were held guilty of criminal conspiracy. So square that up for us. Was this book an honest, realistic assessment of what had happened to you?
No, first, the book I've written, I have written it as I saw it. It's an honest rendering of what I felt, the facts I know. What you said is correct in terms of just the outcomes. But the fact of the matter is that insider trading is in a way, very simple thing to understand. You have to have past information that was insider in nature, market moving in nature. You had to have criminal intent. Mm-hmm. You had to have a quid pro quo. You gave something, you got something back. And you have to have some benefit. And in my case, other than some circumstantial evidence that they wove a story around, there was nothing of the others. There was no benefit, no quid pro quo, absolutely nothing in terms of direct evidence.
So you play victim in the book. I mean, you feel almost as if you were a victim of circumstance. That's the sense one gets, that Rajat Gupta is making a plea to the world at large to tell them, look, I was a victim.
If you look at the prosecution of those times, none of the people who were responsible for the financial crisis were ever held accountable.
Are you saying that because they couldn't get the big fish in Lehman Brothers and other companies, they went after you?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that they didn't do what they really should have done. But yes, they went after me. I was a big fish without much power. I mean, big fish in the sense of I was very well known. I was associated with institutions that are very well known, whether it's be McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Procter & Gamble or the Gates Foundation or, you name it. I was United Nations and so on.
You made mistakes. Would you concede that? Even in the book you do admit in the kind of people you chose to partner, Rajaratnam primarily among them, and there is this entire, this line that you keep repeating in the book about the 16 seconds between a meeting of Goldman Sachs where you were a director and the alleged phone call that you made to Rajaratnam, which was the primary evidence that was used against you, in a sense. So is that something that you accept was a mistake that you made?
16 seconds, I don't know, you're a busy person. I generally, when I get out of a meeting, I call my secretary. I didn't call Rajaratnam, by the way. I called my secretary. And I said, you know, who's on my call list? And I asked whether Rajaratnam, who was supposed to provide me information that day, I'd spoken to him in the morning, saying, I need this information. She said, no, he hasn't. I said, get me Rajaratnam. Interestingly enough, if you look at the transcript of the trial, Lloyd Blankfein himself admitted that he makes, as soon as he gets out of a board meeting, he makes calls. So everybody makes calls after, so 16 seconds, there's no meaning, they played it up. And
because the market moved, because investments were made by Rajaratnam at that moment, which got the Goldman Sachs stock to move. So there was a sense that the prosecution claimed that there was Rajat Gupta claiming innocence, but there was much more to it.
But do you know, people don't realize it, that the Goldman stock started moving the moment the board meeting was scheduled, which was around 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you look at the chart of Goldman Sachs stock moving.
Not that there was going to be this massive investment from Warren Buffett.
Who knows what was there? The idea that just because I make a call after a board meeting to Rajaratnam, whom I was having a dispute at that time, is I called him to pass inside information, is okay. You can say that was the case, but there is no basis for it.
So when you look back, do you have regrets? In the book, from time to time, there's a sense that, as you said, you perhaps made a few wrong calls, you chose the wrong company, you were betrayed by a few people whom you thought were friends.
You know, you can say in hindsight, yeah, should I have? In some ways, I came from the consulting world. The financial world is different. It's much more cutthroat than the management consulting world that I came from. So yeah, I was a little fish out of water in the financial world.
It was a world where scamming was also taking place even as big money was being made.
I don't know, perhaps it was.
As you said, you were a fish out of water in this world.
Perhaps it was. But you know, it's interesting. There were many things that happened that if I had made judgment calls differently, for example, I had resigned from the Goldman Sachs board, okay? Goldman Sachs came back to me and said, please don't resign just now because we're in the financial this thing. And I said, okay, as a sense of duty. If I had not done that, nothing would have happened.
Sure, but you know, what I'm sensing is that there was a lot of public anger around that time.
Oh, sure.
You know, that there were these fat cat bankers getting away for much too long. Banks were getting government bailouts. You were at the wrong place at the wrong time. People were looking for someone from this global business world as a fall guy.
Yeah, and they did not get any of the fat cat bankers. They didn't hold them truly accountable. They made huge fines to these institutions, which in the end the shareholders paid. So what kind of accountability is that for people who made, you know, not so good decisions and put the economy in a very tough spot?
That McKinsey, the firm with which you'd worked for 37 years, you'd been the youngest managing director, excommunicates you virtually overnight, even withdraws your name from the alumnus directory. It almost seemed to me, while reading the book, that you felt betrayed.
It was extraordinarily hurtful. I spent my entire professional career at McKinsey. It's the only email I ever had. It's people, I worked with most of the partners in McKinsey. They mentored me, my seniors. I mentored many of them. And this was a family. And at least I expected that they would hold high the principles of you are innocent till you're proven guilty, or the principles that they dearly espouse, which is a sense of partnership around the world, one partnership. And to kick a partner when they are down at that crucial time hurt a lot.
You also seem to believe that Preet Bharara, whom I mentioned earlier, the ambitious US attorney for New York, ran a deliberate campaign against you, that this was an orchestrated media campaign, PR people being hired. Let's get Rajat Gupta.
If you look at the prosecutorial misconduct, overreach that happens in the US justice system, not just Preet Bharara, but lots of them, is a serious issue in the criminal justice system that needs to be corrected. They also have enormous power and unlimited resources, and also have become very media savvy. Yes, Preet is very media savvy. Why would you charge me day before or a week before the Rajaratnam trial and literally try me in absentia at the Rajaratnam trial when Rajaratnam himself was never charged for Goldman, was never charged for PNG, not one of his charges. And yet the Goldman, my tapes were being played, I had no ability to defend myself. So it was a trial in absentia.
Father was a journalist,
Yes.
a freedom fighter, goes to jail, for fighting for independence, and there goes his son who goes to IIT, does all the right things, brilliant student, and then goes to jail for insider trading. You
Yeah.
think your father would have accepted this journey that you took?
One of the things about my father was that he never spoke a word against the British. He was never angry. So he would have been very proud. I don't hold anything against anybody. I have forgiven, moved on.
You don't have
I have
anger against the American judicial system because, looking at it from the outside, we believe that the American judicial system doesn't get it wrong.
No, it gets it wrong reasonably. I don't know the statistic, but it does get it wrong. And I tell you from my own personal experience, and I tell you from interviewing 40 different prisoners on what had happened to them. And I am absolutely convinced that 25% of them should have never been there.
Very interesting the way you're putting it at the moment. But did your alleged involvement in the insider trading scandal in some way detract from the other side of Rajat Gupta, the philanthropist, the institution builder, someone who built Indian School of Business, America India Foundation, Pan IIT initiative? Do you believe all that gets wiped out somewhere, erased? Or do you believe that there will be a more complex understanding of what you've achieved and what you failed at?
No, the regret really is that they took away 7 years of my life where I could have pursued. I was on a path, I spent more than half my time doing philanthropic things. And the one that I'm the most proud of, you didn't mention, is the Public Health Foundation of India, which
Yes.
can actually have a dramatic impact, long-term impact on the health of this nation. But my biggest regret is they took 7 years away from me that I could have devoted to doing something useful.
But as the judge said in the case, that Mr. Gupta cannot take a Mother Teresa defense. That
No,
I'm a
I
philanthropist, hence you can't hold me guilty of insider trading.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm just
Yes.
saying that the time that it
Sure.
took away. But I have to also tell you, I didn't do these things to be remembered for them. This is not about me. It's about doing the right thing, and it's creating institutions that will outlast you. It doesn't matter whether they remember you or not. It's like if I was so convinced that I wanted to build a legacy, I would have made buildings after me, named schools after me, done this, that. I have no interest in it.
You don't feel you let down all those people who saw you as a role model?
I absolutely feel I let them down. I mean, clearly they looked up to me and I let them down. But some of it, as I said, were perhaps misjudgments on my part. Some of it was maybe wrong place at the wrong time. But nevertheless, that's in my closing remarks to the court. That's what I said. I feel particularly bad about letting down people who always looked up to me, letting down institutions that I had been part of creating. And, I was chairman of the Bill Gates Foundation Advisory Group. And when I resigned from everything, Bill said, no, you don't resign. You are innocent till proven guilty. I believe in that principle. You stay on. I stayed on. He came to a visit to India. The Indian journalists were after him, not about asking about his work on the foundation, but why is Rajat Gupta still the chairman of the advisory board? So I read those newspapers. I said to Bill, it doesn't matter what, I don't want to come in between the good work you're doing and so please let me resign.
I want to ask you in conclusion. You start every chapter in the book with a Tagore quotation.
Yeah.
And you also quote extensively from the Gita towards the end, which was your Bible, as you say, in a sense, in jail. Has the Gita given you that sense of equanimity to deal with all that has happened to you? Do you believe that you've become much more spiritual? Is there something about Indian spirituality that takes you through the tough times, perhaps?
Absolutely. I have to say that 7 weeks in solitary confinement where people go crazy. I was around people who were going crazy. They were banging walls and so on and so forth. I was calm, relaxed. I read the Gita 6 or 7 times during that 7 weeks. I absolutely believe in sort of karma yoga. You do what you can and then you leave the results. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not good. I learned the sense of detachment. You don't get attached. It's detached action. You don't attach yourself to anything. You learn that in prison more than any other place. You are there with very little.
Mr. Gupta, there'll be people watching this interview, some of whom will say, there is Rajat Gupta, he had it all and he squandered it. There'll be others who will say, what is the life lesson we can learn from Rajat Gupta's story? What is that life lesson you believe that people can learn?
Yeah, first I have to say on the first comment, I don't believe I've squandered what is important. I've learned it's not something I would wish on anybody. I wouldn't have wished it on me. But since you have it, life is a series of experiences. It's what you do with them. Nothing is inherently good or bad. And I try to take this experience and turn it into a learning for myself and personal growth. And to some extent, I really feel I've succeeded in that.
You're a better person today than you were pre-2009?
I am a better person for sure. I feel that way. So the lessons there are many lessons I could say that I've learned from my life, not only from just this prison experience and this case and all that. From that I would, as I said before, learn the lessons of detachment, of karma yoga. But before that, I would learn lessons like, how you work with people, how you make other people successful, how you bring partnerships. The creation of PHFI, ISB, etc. wouldn't have happened unless you got talented people together who you make successful.
Are you seeking sympathy when you've written this book? Or are you simply seeking to put the record straight?
Neither of those things. The case has been litigated. It doesn't matter what. I am trying to simply tell my story, which is actually an interesting story, if I may say so myself.
It's a fascinating story. From Kolkata to IIT to Harvard Business School to McKinsey to jail.
Yeah, I want you to read the book and relate to whatever parts you want to relate to, take whatever lessons you want to get out of it. This is not about, trying to explain myself, prove myself, etc. It's simply a story that has very interesting pieces, lessons to be learned. That's all.
By the way, I didn't know till I read this book that Subramaniam Swamy was among those who gave you a recommendation at IIT that enabled you to go to Harvard Business School.
The key recommendation. I just recently met him and we were reminiscing about it. And he's a fascinating person, although he apparently has said many things about me in the last few years, but I relate to him. Likewise, we both have not been in touch, but I relate to him.
Well, that's life. And that's another little storyline.
Yeah.
And what's a fascinating story. Rajat Gupta, thank you very much for joining me here on this special show. Rajat Gupta, where the mind is without fear. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.